Cat TV is celebrating 30 years of community media. Help support Cat TV's next 30 years by becoming a member today. Your membership will help us continue covering meaningful, local content. Thank you for supporting your local community media station.
Officially call the Spinelli Field ad hoc committee meeting to order on this October 13th. We do have some guests this year or this meeting, and we're happy to hear from them at our last meeting that we had in the library last month. Peter Janela's came. He spoke to us about a proposal, a project that he'd been kind of looking at and talking about. And we as a committee kind of decided that we'd like to hear more information going forward. So Pete reached out to Andrew and Jim, who are both here to kind of talk to the committee and throw out their information for us to listen to. What I would like to have is just them to us to not ask questions as they're going through, kind of save those for after as far as the committee goes. You can write stuff down. And then I would like us to be able to give a direction to the board by the end of the committee meeting today as to a direction that the committee feels comfortable with recommending to the board. All that we can do is make a recommendation to the MAU school board, and then the school board will have to have a vote and kind of decide which direction they want to go. So Peter, I'm gonna turn things over to you, and you can introduce your
If I can interrupt for just 1 second, I just wanted to let folks know that remotely, because we can't see it on the screen here, Richard Bump, our recorder, is here. Paul Reef is in attendance, and Shayla Sikora is here as well as Cat TV.
Thank you, Renee.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
So, I'd like to welcome two major players in the artificial turf field world, sports field construction world. Andrew Dijak from Field Turf Company, and Field Turf is one of the major producers of artificial turf, the actual carpet, the actual product. He's going to talk to us tonight about a lot of different things. The other thing is their company offers this leasing program that we've talked about so much, and he's going to add to that information tonight. We also have with us Jim Catella from the Clark Company. Jim, you can correct me if I get some of these facts wrong, but it's a 3-generation sports field construction company out of Delhi, New York. Been doing this for a very, very long time. Has constructed all of the major fields around this area, including the ones at Williams College. That's where I first met the Clark Company when they were building the Williams College baseball field in 2008. So who would like to start?
I'll start it off, and then actually, you guys can ask questions. Go ahead.
I'm sorry to just derail you already.
Yeah, we're leaving.
I'm on week 11 here at the SVSU. I'm new to the central office here, and I don't know all the people in the room. Could we just do a quick, what's your name, what's your role? Just for my edification, here, please.
So you are.
So I'm sorry, yeah. I'm Holly Anderson. I'm the new director of facilities management and operations. My background is in construction, so I'm excited to hear about what you have to say.
Dave Frederickson, Mount Anthony School Board, former coach, teacher, athletic director at Mount Anthony.
Susan Plaisance, not an athlete, never have been. However, I am on the MAU school board and I am a member of the
Dave, you're a member of the committee.
Spinelli Field Committee, as is Dave, yes.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Paul Redding. I'm the head track coach for our high school here, so I have vested interest in the track. I also coach football here at our local high school and was an athlete at MAU and raised a son through there, so I have a very vested interest in his project as well.
Jim Catella, Clark Companies.
Peter Janellis, a local native, went to Mount Anthony, graduated in 77, came home. I'm a veterinarian, had a practice here for 34 years, and now I'm giving back as a volunteer to Mount Anthony.
Andrew Dijak with Field Turf.
Frank Kenny, MAU member.
Jackie Kelly, a MAU member.
I'm Lori Grattan. I am the booster president at the high school. I just graduated 2 kids the last 2 years out of MAU who were sports players. And I'm also a business owner in town, and I'm part of the Spinelli Field Committee.
Mike Malloy, varsity boys soccer coach. I head the social studies department at the high school, and I'm the chairman of the ad hoc committee.
Tony D'Onofrio, Director of Facilities and Grounds at both the high school and the middle school. And I am also on the Spinelli field.
Renee Gordon, Director of Finance, not on the committee, but I'm married to the coach of the football team. And the guy over there against the wall would be my dad, who is just a community member, vested interest in and has
My
played.
name's Rick. I played football under the school. Father Spinelli was principal of in the late 60s, so I'm very interested in football.
We do have some people on CAT too.
Yeah.
Right, but
Chayla and Paul.
All right, great. Thank you very much for the.
That was a good idea. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm the regional vice president for Field Turf in New England. And we meet with communities like yours like all the time. So I still tell my dad, like, the only thing you do is sell turf. That's all you do. I'm like, I swear to God, there's nothing else there. But so we build and design and construct, permit, and help get financing for a variety of different athletic surfacing projects. We're owned by a company called Target Sports. Target Sports is a company that has revenues of billions of dollars a year, and we can provide services for turf, for track. We do we get into the lighting array, any kind of indoor basketball service, basically anything, any sport you can play on, we provide the surfacing for it. We partner for our site contracting work because even though the stuff that you see on top is the black or red track or the green field, there's a lot of invisible infrastructure going on underneath the field that if it's not done properly and not done the way it's supposed to be done, there's going to be problems in the long term. So we only partner with the best. Jim's been doing this a long time. And so all the subsurface work, construction management, design is done by Jim's company. And depending on how the project is procured, if it's done through a cooperative purchase program, which I think Peter talked to you before about it, we would be the prime on that. We have to do that because we can hold the contracts for the state of Vermont for all the servicing and any ancillary items like site work or field goals or lights, right, like that. But Jim we work hand in hand with him. We've done that before, many times before. So the scope of the project as we know it, if we're wrong, tell us, is replacement of the grass surface with a synthetic turf field, all weather, all purpose field. The track, redoing the track, which we also own a track company called Biden, then redoing the lights as well with a company that I worked for 10 years actually called Musco Lighting. They're the leader in lights in the industry. So the purpose of what I see the purpose of this meeting, and correct me if I'm wrong, is to kind of go over what our scope is. There's some timing concerns especially with supply chain and the construction schedule. I'd like to have some questions about funding and how that gets approved. And also Jim's going to get into the nuts and bolts of kind of how long it takes, when it takes, the milestones for permitting, that sort of thing. So I'm going to do a little bit about financing, then hand it over to Jim, and then we can kind of go back and forth. So, we have some ballpark estimates of what we think the project's going to cost. Depending on this conversation, we'll probably go back, run some numbers, and a very short couple of days will probably be pretty secure on that. So there's 2 ways you can do it. Right? You can pay us. There you go. Have at it. Or we have an arm of our company called Field Turf Finance, which you can either get a traditional loan or you can get a municipal lease purchase. And our municipal lease purchase program is only good for public sector folks like yourself. There's limited or no money down on the financing side. So you don't have to put like 50% down, anything like that. The term is for up to 8 years. And the rate varies, and don't quote me on this because the rates could be 35%, so I don't know what that, but I talked to the guy this morning, he said they're in like the mid to upper fives. So probably similar to what you get for a bond, but it's around that amount. The benefits are, it doesn't count as debt, so it's a year-to-year municipal lease program. It doesn't affect like your bond rating, which is huge because it doesn't count, towards that debt. And it's an actual year-to-year municipal lease, so it doesn't encumber, they call it future council or future votes. You have to come back every year and vote on the payment. So those are the huge benefits of doing the financial piece. The other thing is procurement, and you talked about the co-op. So the benefit of the co-op is that you can, pick your partner, hopefully, right? Pick your systems, pick your surfacing. And the benefit of that is that you get a discount because you're doing it through a nationally recognized bid program and not a local bid where there's maybe 2 or 3 guys that can do it. Vermont has a relationship with 37 different states that bid out work every 3 years, and all the work that's covered under what we're talking about here has already been bid out. And we take the best prices out of those 37 different states, not the 3 or 4 local contractors. So you get the best possible price. So that's kind of like our role in it, as a material supplier, as a finance, and as an arm for procurement. Now Jim's going to get into the infrastructure part, the permitting, the timing, and then I think we have to go back and forth with Q&A, and then we're going to ask some questions, and then you can go from there. But go ahead.
Andrew did a good job. He sells the sizzle. Our company sells the steak, kind of thing. They do. They got the glitzy part, the finished surface and all that, and the finished track surface. But what goes underneath, we think, is important. So, company I work for is based out of Delhi, New York. So this is close. I mean, we're used to. We only work in the Northeast. We only build outdoor athletic fields. We build tracks, outdoor athletic fields, and that's pretty much it. A few tennis courts once in a while. I came out here in December.
December 21st, yeah.
Peter, looked at the site, provided some ideas. But typically when you get into something like this, I think we want to hear from the group about the amenities, more than just the turf and the track. How about new fence? How about this or not? What are we going to do with those bleachers that are on the inside? I'm more of a detail person. I'm also a licensed professional engineer in the state of Vermont. So we can provide design build services if that's what you're looking for. We can work with a designer if the school district has a designer that they like. We can help him with the sports side of it. When we get into a project like this, and we've done quite a bit of work in Vermont. Burton, right up the road, we've done some design build projects where we've had to go through the whole permitting process for both synthetic turf field and a track there. So it really is a stormwater thing. That's what they're going to be concerned with when you take that natural grass field and convert it to synthetic turf. And so the real details will come out once we do real survey and real geotechnical investigation to figure out how we're going to handle the stormwater. But we've done enough of it. We've looked into things enough that we can get you real close, we think, with the pricing. I provided some pricing back in early February for the project. Awful lot's changed in the world since then. So I think it's important. I think Andrew pointed it out. There are some things that when you make your recommendation, if things move along, commitments on some things that might be either long lead time items or capacity items are going to be important for the group to understand and realize. I guess I guess I'll just open it up
So
to,
you come, yeah, so the other thing is that from a, from a turf, why do you want to do a turf field perspective, or like why, and don't take this like I'm, disrespecting your school or anything, but like, we're just talking about tomorrow, there's a football game. Or is there gonna be one? Who knows? So, and if there is a football game, what's that field gonna look like in a week? So, one of the benefits is you are paying a tremendous amount more money than what you currently do for your athletic fields. But the amount of activities that can be held on that field in an all-weather environment, in a safe night environment, and also, I'm not saying it's unlimited, but it's, instead of playing X amount of games, you could have 6 practices a day instead of playing, whatever, 12. I mean, we did one school last year in Connecticut, they had 12 games a year. Now they have 15 practices a week. So that's kind of where it goes. So I was thinking about that when he was talking. I just want to make sure we threw it out there that, it's an important piece, we think, to a school system, but, we can do it all, but we also there's a lot of benefits of doing it. It's not like, hey, we're just throwing X amount of money away. This is a huge, huge problem.
one of the components is lights.
Yeah.
Yes. You have a synthetic turf field, you can get, some return on those lights. A natural grass field, and we build natural grass fields. But I was on a project in Ballston Spa just before I came here, where we're sodding through the co-op over 240,000 square feet of natural grass field right now. But lights make more sense on a synthetic turf field because of the amount of usage you can get on a synthetic versus natural grass. The cost benefit ratio for the lights isn't there as much for natural grass.
So let's go questions.
So, and I can lead that and just know, just to give you guys just some background of how we got to where we are, just so you know, and I'm sure Peter is filled you in, but Peter was a little late to the, to the game as well. The committee's been together for almost 3 years, 2.5 years. We started the committee in March of 2020, February of 2020 was before the pandemic and COVID had, but we've been talking about this, myself, I know Chad Gordon, who's the, football coach, the former AD, this was something that we even met, I think in 2019 as just a group to kind of start looking at this. And I know the superintendent and the board at the time said, hey, let's put a committee together and let's do an investigation. Let's do this the right way. Let's go through all the process. And the committee met many times over the course of, into 2021. And we ended up coming to a unanimous consensus that for the usability factor, for the fact that, one of the quotes, I think an athletic director in Vermont said, you get 4 fields with one turf field because you're practicing and you're playing and you're doing, it's not just 4 football games and 12 soccer games a year. It's like so many practices and you can use it during PE and you can bring out use it all the time and it's just always in use. And that was what was attractive to us as a committee. We wanted the town to have a facility they could, be proud of and that people could use and not just use just for the fall season and just for games. So that was our decision. And then we went forward and we had engineers hired, we had a design factor, and we sent a project out to the voters in November of last year. So November of 2021. And I think, and Renee, you can it was a $3.5 million bond for approval. And the voters did not, they turned it down about 1,200 to 800 or so voters. And so then we just took a step back as a committee and we tried to reassess kind of where we were at. We've had meetings as a committee since then. And it's still the committee's consensus that yes, we want to still go forward with a synthetic turf field for the usability, but can we pull back on some of the, some of the extras that we had, like, a building that maybe, okay, let's put that aside. Maybe some of the, extra landscaping and the extra stuff, like, can we just focus on the field, the track, and the lights, to begin with, and see where we can get for there, and see if that process. And that's when Peter, I think, came into the mix and said, like, was excited about the, the co-op and the talking to Jim and talking to you, and just kind of got the ball rolling a little bit there. So that's a little bit of the history, just so you guys know. We did, kind of put forward to the voters about a year ago, about 11 months ago, a potential bond. And now we're back with a smaller project, with kind of a pared down project, but I still think it gets to the essential needs that the community and the school.
I've shared that with these guys, the sensitivity about the increasing in taxes in the community and all that. And we're very sensitive about that.
Yep.
And the whole idea of this leasing program helps to kind of not get around it, but not have to increase taxes per se. And maybe work with our budget that we have.
Right.
Yeah.
Does anyone on the committee, yes, Susan, want to add to anything?
I think that one of the concerns of the voters was not only the money, was the surface itself. And we heard a lot about PFOAs and everything else, and maybe you can talk a little to that.
Sure. So I'll start very general and then kind of define it and come back. So there's 400 studies that have been done on synthetic turf carpet that have shown in a collegial empirical refereed studies that show that there's zero link whatsoever between like cancer or anything like that and playing on a synthetic turf field. There's zero. There's 400 of those. On the other side, when you look at there's media accounts and there's like kind of hearsay and stuff like that. But I was in a meeting in the field down close to New Haven. We talked to folks from Yale who are much smarter than I am. And they were discussing it. And we said, okay, would you have anything that you can show from a study or anything? They don't have it. So there's hundreds of studies on one side, zero on the other. Now, that doesn't mean you don't get pushback or like what's in it or what. So the newest thing that came up was it's called PFOS or PFAS, PFAS. So that's a lubricant that's used in manufacturing processes all over the world for everything. In synthetic turf, you have to take this plastic stuff and you have to stick it through an extruder to make the fiber, and that extruder needs a lubricant. So some manufacturers use a lubricant that has, they call them these forever chemicals, PFAS chemicals. Some manufacturers use that. It gets in synthetic turf goes in there. The theory is, I don't agree with this theory, but this is the theory, and either way, that it gets there, the PFOS goes in the ground, stays in the ground, right? It's contaminated. So that was an issue because there were some manufacturers that do that. So field turf has never, ever used PFAS or PFAS in their manufacturing process ever. We do use a lubricant, but it's a water-based lubricant without those chemicals. And after the extrusion process, the water dissipates and it just evaporates in the factory where we make it. And we know what goes on in the manufacturing process because we make the fiber. So we're not buying the fiber from somebody else. And yeah, I don't think they have it. We actually control that. And we have stamped legal documents that say we don't use it. So from a health perspective, at a high school level, there is no safer surface as synthetic turf field for injuries. There's just not even close. For a meticulously maintained field, like a European soccer field, it's literally like 1% safer than a synthetic turf field, but you don't have $1 million a year to maintain a field like that. So at a high school level, there's nothing safer than a synthetic turf field. And you don't use PFAS either.
Follow up, the question that I had was another comment that had come up from the people that I spoke to was when the turf is done with its life, then what happens to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a wave of those going on right now. We do about 20 or 25 a year, just in New England alone. So the infill that we would suggest for your field is a higher level infill. You can reuse that infill 3 or 4 times up to like a 30 or 40-year period. So you have the carpet in the infill, say it's 15 years from now or whatever it is. We can take the carpet up, we can remove the infill from the carpet and we store it. We take the carpet and we recycle it. So we have a program now called Goal Zero. So we're net neutral on our carbon. All of our waste that we have on our construction site gets recycled, all of it. And then all the carpet during a removal also goes to a recycling center. The infill stays there. We test it to make sure it's okay. We put down a new carpet and then we reuse the infill on top of it. So that saves not only a tremendous amount of money, a ton of space in the landfill, and in that up here, I didn't even want to say it because I know we're being recorded, but the warranty is 8 to 10 years and it lasts much longer than that in a northern environment.
So my next question, average lifespan.
I know so the warranty is for 8 to 10 years, depending on which product you choose. For a northern climate, you're looking at 12 years, and if you maintain it correctly, it can be longer than that. We've had fields that are maintained correctly, that are our highest level fields that have gone up to 15 years. That's an anomaly, and the reason it's an anomaly is because they groom it correctly, they maintain it. It's not a maintenance-free field. I mean, there's limited maintenance, but you got to maintain it correctly. They don't allow small problems to get bigger, and then they bring us in if there's a big issue. So and that's what it takes. But the legal part of this is 8 to 10 years, depending on product. Should last you 12. You can get a couple more years if you maintain it.
So on the upside, am I monopolizing?
No, they're all A+ questions. So
Just one little question. Your website says it's only guaranteed for 8 years.
8 to 10 years. So it depends.
No, the website says 8 years.
So the core product, we have a product called Core, and if you procure systems off of our higher end systems off of the co-op, you get a 10-year warranty. So if you look up on the website,
8 or 10 years, not 8 to 10, 8 or 10
So
years,
usually
depending on the product.
you get an 8-year warranty, and depending on which, if you use a higher level product, you can get up to a 10-year warranty.
Right, Susan?
And if that's not on the website, I'd be surprised by that, but maybe it's not.
Most of their products are 8-year
Most of them,
warranty.
right.
And that's driven by the ultraviolet. It's a national warranty. So the fields in Florida at the end of 8 or 10 years are ready for replacement.
And the
in
replacement
Texas,
costs
but
as much as the initial.
not even close, because all of the work that we do, when it's time for replacement, you only need to talk to him. Our work is done. Our work lasts a long time. All the stone, all the under drains, everything underneath is fine. That doesn't have to be done again. So it's strictly pull up the turf and put down a new turf. I'm oversimplifying it, fine grade, touch up, things like that. But as long as your field is draining well for that 10, 12, 14-year period, there's no reason to do anything what's underneath or on the sides of it.
So my other question was, can you give us an idea of the difference in cost to maintain turf versus grass? I know it's different everywhere.
Well, so the way I approach this question, and I'm not trying to evade the question because it's a good question. You make your money back after the first replacement cycle. So you pay for all this infrastructure up front. The field lasts for, say, 12 years. You replace the field at a small percentage of the total cost of the project. And then you start playing on that field, and in about 2 years, it's a break even. So it's like internal rate of return. It's like, whatever the graph is, well, it's 0 in about 2 years after the first replacement. And then that's all savings from there on out. And the reason it takes that long is because there is a large upfront cost to be able to do it. That's kind of the biggest reason. But the biggest thing is that it's the way I look at it is hours of use for what you're paying. So you could have I mean, I don't know what you guys have, maybe 10 hours a week, maybe, I don't know what you play with.
On the field right now, maybe three, if that. I mean, because we host five and five, so 10 football, JV as well. I'm just saying like JV games and then middle school games, I'm like mine. So and then maybe a half dozen soccer games.
So you could go from 3 hours a week to 40 hours a week.
No, I get
And
that
so the
benefit for
cost
sure.
per hour, if you even factor that in, the payback is a little bit less. But conservatively speaking, I've run numbers literally 50 times on this. You're not making money on the field until you replace it, play a little bit on that first replacement. So it takes about that long.
He hit on it. It's a harder question for us to answer because we build natural grass fields. I get done and I give them, I've grown in their field. It's not just you.
That's what they.
And we give them a maintenance manual that says, we want you to do the following things to maintain this beautiful natural grass field. And it talks about fertilizations and all kinds of other things, fungicides, herbicides, pesticides, aerification, all these things, besides mowing and watering that need to be done. So somebody that's really doing that regimen is spending a lot more than somebody that just goes out and plays on it, mows it, and ignores it. So for us to make the comparison, are you spending $50,000 a year on that field besides the mowing?
That's
Probably.
Kim and them, those two over there.
I did a rough estimate last year when we started talking about it again, and just in the fall, and it was really rough. But between the paint, the man hours, the mowing, the manicuring, we were upwards just for the fall season of between $35,000 and $40,000.
And that
To play 4 football games.
that's in line with what I hear from a lot of high schools. And you will spend nowhere near that to maintain these fields. A properly maintained field, and Andrew can get into that more, but first thing I've run into is people that want to do more to it because they've been so used to mowing that field. And we're the ones saying, whoa, don't do that. We've just given you a groomer. That doesn't mean we want you to go out there 3 times a week like you mowed. We don't want you to go out there 3 times in the first half a year that you have. So
you as part of the, you purchase a field and then you get 2 normal pieces of equipment. One's a groomer, one's a sweeper. It's included in the system. You need a vehicle to tow it, and we give you a maintenance guy that lets you do it. So you can do that, or we give you a credit for that. It's a few $1,000s. Or you can use, we have customer service maintenance staff in New England. So the guy did, at Mercedes-Benz Center, no joke, for the Super Bowl, he also maintains the fields in New England. That's how good so you can do that, and that you can sign a long-term contract. You go twice a year for 8 years, and you're talking for that amount of time is about $50,000. So you're over an 8-year period, you're talking about $50,000 compared to $50,000 a year. But you again, you do have to pay that up front.
So
You come twice a year.
So it's probably a stupid question, but you guys will give our staff training on what we need to do to maintain.
So there's a couple of trainings. One, the lights and stuff, we train you on how to do all that stuff.
Right.
And then during handoff, before you sign, you have to sign what's called a certificate of completion, which means it's not a building permit per se, but it starts the warranty and everything kind of kicks off from there. Right. At that time, we train the maintenance staff on how to maintain the field with the equipment that we provide. Now, you can buy a piece of equipment that costs $100,000. They'll do it like that, but the equipment that we provide takes 45 minutes to an hour to be able to maintain the field. Maybe some spot treatments around high use areas like a corner kick in soccer or something like that. But you're talking an hour 5 times a year, maybe?
Yeah,
something like that.
The most, once every other month.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think that we're looking at within our school is the practice fields and all the other, we're not even talking about just the game field. I mean, there's fields across the street and the field, they're just torn up because they get way too much use all the time. And what we're able to do is stay off of some of those. And use
Exactly. That's what I was just going to say when you were talking about that earlier. It's like we learned in school. Now I'm going way back because I'm an old guy, about crop rotation. It's what it is. If you can take the abuse and put it on a synthetic turf field, we're natural grass guys too. We tell these schools like Williams, but it makes your natural grass field so much better if you don't have to be out there on a day like tomorrow and play or practice on that. If you can take some of the abuse off of it, move it onto your synthetic turf field, it not only makes them better, it makes your maintenance heavy.
Like, we use the same fields like for soccer or lacrosse, and like, they're like, by the time lacrosse gets to the field, they're like, like, I'm like, I know,
Lacrosse cannot use,
yeah.
yeah, lacrosse cannot play on our field right now.
Lacrosse is the toughest.
Yeah, so the big thing, you said 50,000 for field, and you're right, the number is 4-1. So to get the same use, it's about 200 right now. Which is not the payment for the thing, but it's not that far off. Okay.
Anybody else on the committee? Dave has.
First off, I think Rutland's on 15th
I'm
year.
just gonna ask if Rutland, is that
Yeah.
your product at Rutland, do you know? Do you guys do the
Rutland,
Rutland?
Rutland, Vermont, did you guys put that turf field in?
I don't know the
If it's
answer.
15 years, it was before your time.
I was 4 years old, so. I don't know, you know what, I
I think
don't.
it was a Casella project is what
Yeah.
they.
Well, yeah.
But I know, I think they built it. I don't know what the turf.
I don't know, I should know, so let's.
You guys did 3 projects in Vermont last year.
15 years ago, field turf was the dominant
Yeah,
player
I'm gonna
in
say we did it, but I
Northeast.
can't guarantee it. But I will,
That's an you know, 15 years is not a normal, I mean, it's still in pretty good shape. We were just up there for the Southern
It's
Vermont
the,
camp.
it's the UV, the lack of UV degradation in the snow, it prolongs the field usage and the weather. So a field in Florida with the same level of play is gonna last 30% less time. But yeah, he's talking about references that we did together, Middlebury, UVM.
Did you guys do St. John's Fair?
Just did it.
I haven't been up there. I watched the scout film from last week when they played BBA and
Yeah,
it's a phenomenal field.
yeah, we partnered on that one together, and that's a good project.
And this is a similar project, right?
Yes, very much.
All right.
We did not do the track. We're all set up to do the track.
There's a ledge that-
Yes, no, that we're set and ready. They were supposed to do it this year,
Yeah.
but they kicked the can down the road for another year.
Talking about under the turf and safety, talk about the cushion that you put in there, please.
Typically, it is dependent on the product that, there's certainly, the opportunity to do. First of all, the base underneath is fully under drain and porous stone. Now, you think about stone, it's pretty hard. So what do you have between that turf and the stone? What really absorbs the shock is the infill that's in there. But there are pads that a lot of times people put in. Most of the projects that we do don't have them, but I'll let Andrew talk about, because if it comes, it's coming from field.
Yeah, so, you can't put a shock absorbent pad in it. It's usually done in the Northeast. I mean, this year we did 40 projects. I think we had 1 or 2 with a pad. And they're usually done when there's an alternative infill, like a non-rubber infill. So like cork or coconut or a plastic, stuff like that. And the reason we don't recommend it is because it freezes. So you have a field in the Northeast, you can use an alternative infill because folks think it's safer, when in actuality, the studies come out saying it's actually less safe for injury. So that's when you use a pad. The shock absorbency is an important question. Comes from the infill system that you use. So we have for football, we have a minimum standard that we'll put on for a football field, and it ranges anywhere between about 8 and a little over 9 pounds of infill, a mixture of sand and rubber per square foot. So for your field, that's got almost probably close to 90,000 square feet, you're talking almost 1 million pounds of infill on that field. And what that does is it makes the field play as close to that natural surface field that Wilmington as possible. We've worked with a lot of people, we've read every research study on this, and there's a direct inverse relationship, to look at that way. When the infill weight goes down, the injuries go up. So we like to make sure, especially for football, that we're providing enough infill, and that goes over the stone. And then we test it on day 1. And then we give you the folks that do the testing. And then we ask you guys, maybe every couple of years do the testing just to make sure it's performing the way it should be. And we have performance requirements in our warranty that say it won't go above X, Y, or Z, whatever test. Your Gmax is the most common one. But a properly maintained field will maintain its Gmax pretty much throughout the life of the system.
One more.
Dave, go ahead.
Are we looking at a 6 or an 8 lane track?
How much money you got? No, but he'll answer that question, not snarky like me, but he'll give you a real answer.
And you currently have a 6-lane track, I believe.
Yes.
Yes. So,
Shoot 7, this is 7.
right. Which, on a straightaway, it's kind of nice to have an extra lane or two for all the heats and everything.
Yeah.
But when I looked at this, I was working with what you had. I wasn't expanding the track. Like Peter had pointed out that there were a couple of areas. We walked the whole thing that needed some work. Some low areas in the existing blacktop that we wanted to. My thought was peel that surface up, peel the track surface up. Check planarity of the existing blacktop. The planarity of the track, other than a few areas, it's not doing a lot of this or that. It's not bad. So it tells me that the blacktop underneath, and I'm a track guy. All my kids ran track in college. I'm a track guy. I think that you shouldn't have to replace that blacktop. We're going to have to repair that blacktop. And I didn't propose originally to expand. If you were going to do anything, you might want to put an extra lane on the straightaway. But we have an awful lot in the Northeast of 6-lane tracks that can host, sectionals and things like that. It's nicer to have an extra lane in the straightaway lane. It isn't a necessity. But again, that would be another expense because now you're coming in and putting some additional, infrastructure underneath the track surface.
And I think we, as a committee, that wasn't, in the first engineering, it wasn't to expand the track. I don't recall of that.
Was to expand the width of the field for.
Correct. So just- well, to follow, like you were asking about the bleachers, there is those bleachers, those visitor bleachers that are inside the track. They're not to stay there. They're there as a temporary kind of spot. They would be removed outside the fence line. There was a building that was out there. Again, they're just there temporarily because there's no reason to expand the field at this point unless we get, a project in place. We wanted to, it was like a crown to the field, although there was some drainage issues I know that we had seen that were kind of near there. But it is to expand the field to the inside of the existing
track, which will automatically give you that extra width if the bleachers are gone.
Correct.
My struggle when I looked at.
Yeah, they went to the field before they came to.
Okay, good. Yeah.
My struggle is where do the bleachers go? That looks like a pretty easy set of bleachers to move.
I have a whole nother section that isn't even on it.
Yeah.
We took them off because they were,
So I think and I don't mean to make it easy, but I mean, it's a structurally sound set of bleachers that look like could easily be moved. The problem is where does it go?
And they would go outside of the fencing, kind of to the right of where the
red building was.
Where the red building was.
Jim said he saw that dip in the. where the big-
It drops off, so you have to really build, do you need retaining walls? What do you need to do?
That was the initial idea, was to move them over exactly where you looked at them and do that exact. And we have a local contractor that offered to do some of the masonry.
I was gonna say, because when I looked at it, I just said, okay, we kind of said, pretend those bleachers aren't here, that they go somewhere. And
So right now the field's off center. And so what we do
Yes.
is we center the field and increase the width. And so that everywhere that you see grass, it would be turf, and then you would be redoing the areas.
Right, and we'd automatically be reshaping the crown. The first step when you go in there, all this topsoil has to go. We can't have any organics trapped underneath there because they're gonna decompose over time, but they're not gonna decompose uniformly. Like your track has a low spot, we'd have a whole bunch, so all the topsoil, anything with organics has to be removed. But we replace that with the porous stone in the underground system, so. But I've got a question. Just a quick, you hired an engineer, you had engineer, did they go so far to did you pay for any survey or geotechnical investigation?
Drawings.
That would be a Renee question, maybe.
got
I don't
drawings,
know.
but we didn't
No.
get anything like
Like-
No, I don't think, we didn't drawing, Geo.
We
We
had
didn't have
drawings.
geotechnical, though.
If you have drawings, you probably have survey.
That could help.
I'm just, when we get
I never.
ready, that would be something that if you've already paid for it, why pay again to do those things?
So there's things that work.
I remember seeing them there.
There's things that can work concurrently, so like the design and permitting can be done while you're waiting for the money to become available. And it's not a large cost, it's a little bit of cost, but you can start doing that work now, so that when, and there's the question of mine, when's money available? We'd love to work with you, but we can't, have $1 million of exposure. Not a vote. So like, when's the money coming available? But in the meantime, if we had plans, if we had things, you could start the permitting process and some very soft costs associated with that.
I have a list of questions.
and roll.
So I'm like, oh, geotechnical engineering, I'm so excited.
Who'd you work for before?
I worked for the last 13, so my background is in construction management and wood products engineering from Syracuse University and stateside. And I spent over 20 years in the construction field. Most recently, I spent the last 13 years running all the capital construction at college. So I'm very interested, especially during design development and the construction administration process. Like how much say or input do we have in this middle process? And I ask because every stormwater drain needs a tracer line, every manhole cover should be hinged, every breaker should be square D. Like there are standards that don't exist presently in our supervisory union, that as we do work, I would like to make sure get implemented, so that we make informed decisions moving forward. So how much input do we have on this middle process?
So there's two parts to that question. You want to go first?
You go first.
No,
That'll give me time to think about the right answer.
Well, no, I'm gonna give you the reins so you cheat on it if you want. So all the stuff through the permitting process has to be done by code. So it's not us determining what should be done. It's, either standard practice or the municipality has certain codes, what have you. The submittal process would ultimately end with the owner signing off on what is going to be in the field, what we're going to build. So we're not, it's not the chicken or the rooster watching the hen, whatever, I don't even know that. But we're providing submittals to an ownership group, most likely you, and you would say, okay, yes, that's good. If it's not good, you kick it back and say why, and then we have to resubmit.
Okay.
So that's number one. The second thing, so there's two design development things. One is the infrastructure and the other is the field. You have, from the DD, you from the field side of it, or the construction side of it, a lot of that's standard, but from the field side, it's carte blanche. You guys can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of exciting things you can do, logos and branding and just all this other stuff. But from a construction side, you have the final say, and ultimately the building official has the final say.
So
Yeah.
we don't get this question very often, but usually the submittals people are concerned with are the glitzy stuff, the logos, the lines, what are we striping it for, how many? Whereas I'm gonna give you a dozen right off the bat. The first 12 submittals out of the box will be yuck,
No, that's a good one.
HDPE pipe,
That's your piping,
the
yes,
silt
please.
fence, all the different components that go in there.
Yep.
The stone gradations and where is it coming from? But a lot of it is driven by what we go through with permitting. They're gonna want us to prove that we have 40% voids in our porous stone. And all these things that when we go for agency regulatory approval,
Right.
that we have to be able to prove with, you know, a stormwater pollution prevention plan with HydroCAD and all those things that, and the person in our office that handles all of that is a Syracuse University stateside
CSI.
stormwater.
Paid for state college?
Maple.
And
That's where Maple
Syracuse.
is. So,
Best investment
Anyway.
ever.
So I,
That's what
the
she
short
does.
answer, that was a long answer. Short answer is collaborative.
Okay,
So it's not like we're over on an island, you guys are like, what the heck's going on here? It's more of a collaborative than it is anything else.
great.
It's
And
open
then,
book, there's no.
as far as the existing conditions, are there any existing utilities out there? Are there any that, let me phrase it a different way. Has there been a survey of any underground utilities? Because what I want to avoid is spending all this money on the top and then not addressing the
There's
infrastructure.
drainage under there. There's an old sprinkler system under there. And there is wires coming from the pole to a junction box that have been disconnected.
Yeah, and do we have that on a print? Do we
We
have?
have the drainage print. We don't have the sprinkler system print anywhere in the ground. It's just your basic, you know, pop-up sprinkler system somewhere in there that froze.
That's
That-
what-
Yeah, that froze. It always froze. So they disconnected it and left it under
I
there.
just,
The wires, I know where they go down underneath.
yeah, and because I'm relatively new and the existing documents, like as-builts aren't as complete as they could be. That was a really nice way to say that, sorry. I don't know if there's an old clay tile sewer somewhere under there. I don't know what existing things were put in when you were playing football, so like.
We have the original plans of the field. When they
Yeah.
redid it in was it the early 90s, Dave?
think so.
Yeah.
So we
So
have those-
I-
we haven't done any of that work.
Yeah, so
we
I
haven't
know
done
that's like the next step. But do you know if we haven't done any geotechnical drilling, have we had any experience with ledge in that area?
I haven't done any drilling.
I think it used to be a riverbed, you know, like the baseball field, the softball field, it's all on a rock riverbed.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's any ledge.
And there is a riverbed that goes behind the wood chip facility that we pump out.
So
Yeah.
the light poles are probably in the ground 8 feet-ish. And so somebody had to dig down 8 feet and put those in at least. So when you do the geotech stuff, how far?
Well, typically, when lights are involved, first of all, our geotech for the field is all about stormwater infiltration. What can we infiltrate? You know, what do we have there? But for the lights, we're gonna have to go deeper.
We're going
We're gonna probably go 15 to 20 feet for the light pole foundations. But out on the field, we're gonna only go down where we have to go so many feet below where we're hoping to infiltrate. If we can't infiltrate, then we treat it a little different. The one thing that's going to be important for us to see, is there a pipe crossing underneath the track that we can utilize
Yep.
to send our stormwater?
There is.
There's a great.
Out. And I did see, in front of the bleachers, there's an open grate.
Mhm.
Yep. To your point, when we're done, there'll be no open grates, nothing. All structures will be buried. It doesn't mean they'll be disconnected. But these fields vertically drain, so we can have that structure so it's buried, yet we can get to it. If you need to, we can open it up and you can get to it.
Great, I just want to address, like, for example, Cornell spent millions of dollars putting in the new sod field and there were existing 100-year-old utilities below it. And then that they had to slip line them and it became a whole thing. I want to be mindful of what could be existing and manage that as part of the process. Do you know, is the high school at Act 250?
Middle school, that's the high school.
Okay. I think that would help guide us through design development too.
Yeah, we have familiarity.
Yeah, and does the high school have a stormwater master plan, or do we have to pull a permit with every time we touch the stormwater system?
there's no permanent plan that I know of. The middle school does, but not the.
Typically, even if you do have one, once you convert natural to synthetic, you have to
Right,
give
Yeah.
the regulatory people a custom
yeah.
plan for that
So I did,
site.
with the stormwater site plan, usually there has to be a retention pond. Did you?
We try to do it under the field,
Right.
Yeah,
that void space that I talked about.
Yeah.
So let's 40% voids, 10 inches deep, we can store a 4-inch storm if we design it properly.
they'll have
And choke
tracer
it off.
wire.
What's that?
They will have a tracer wire.
Yes.
I have no opinions, I'm sorry. As far as your construction management arrangement, is it cost plus, is it CM? Do you do lump sum, like what is your standard?
So what we do is we quote the job out and match the price.
Lump
So
sum,
lump
through the co-op.
Right, and then, if there's, we try, I mean, it's very rare that we'll offer a non-owner generated change order. We're gonna do a lot of the upfront infrastructure and costs associated with it, making sure we're not gonna be charging you in the future for anything that got messed up. It's a design build, so ultimately the design comes back to us. Owner generated change orders are different.
Yeah, right.
We're not there, but that's the way it works. And so that's it. So we're gonna give you a price through the co-op that's already been bid out multiple times and that's your number.
And are you guys self-performing?
So we self-perform all of our work and Jim self-performs all of his work.
And there are a few exceptions, electrical. We Typically want to find, now we can come in and put the poles in the air and do all of those things, but we typically want to work with a local electrician
Yeah.
that maybe is familiar here at the school.
We have a good one.
Okay, that always helps a lot, because.
Every inch of that's.
Okay, well, that's what we would want that. We don't self-perform electric. We also typically, if you want new fence, we bring in a fence contractor. We can either work with a local fence contractor. We have a few out of the Albany area that work with us a lot. So that would be, it's those type of things, but for the most part, it's Clark manpower and Clark equipment. These guys do this. This is what they do every day.
Yeah.
And,
The turf material installation side and the track material installation side, it's all on us.
And are you guys unionized shops or non-union?
open shop.
Open shop, okay.
I don't like to use the term non-union.
Yeah.
I don't get, yeah.
No, and some of the install crews are union. We typically use.
We can bring in a union shop, but the prevailing wage rates in Vermont are
Yeah.
much lower than what a union shop would be nationally.
You talked about the groomer and the sweeper coming in, right? And that's something that's.
It's part of the package because we want to make sure we're not giving you a field that you don't want to maintain.
Right, and so the groomer, and I want to be clear, I have no horse in this race. The first football game I ever went to was at Penn State, and I'm like, why does one guy get the ball every time?
Right.
I don't have.
Place to watch your first football game.
Yeah.
It's not just football though. It's
Yeah.
sports, right?
If you want to talk about snowboarding, I could do that all day, but is there an annual cost associated with operation and maintenance of those? Because anything that has pieces and parts moves, like it needs belts.
I mean, just normal like lubricating, they're very simple machines. They run, the wheels are bolted. There's not a tremendous amount of maintenance on the machine.
So it's like a lawn tractor type maintenance.
Very similar, yeah, very similar.
Okay, especially for budget reasons, we should build.
Yeah, that's something you wouldn't have to budget for.
Okay.
If you wanted us to supplement what you were doing, or you not to do anything at all, that would be an additional cost.
Okay, sorry, I don't mean to be I just have a couple more questions.
And it's this isn't bad.
Okay, at the end of the lease, do we own it?
Yes.
Okay, all right, that answers that question. And then how do you marry in ADA and adaptive sports into the plan?
So I'll do the turf stuff and then Jim can talk about the other stuff. So the turf that we would be supplying here is ADA accessible.
Okay,
On the turf. Now, off of it and getting there, I don't know the answer to that.
And the track is also.
Oh, yeah. All surfacing is ADA accessible.
Okay.
We have documentation on that.
So the next step is, where do you provide that? Do you have it now? A real survey
Right.
We have ADA
tells us.
compliant bleachers on both sides.
And the paths from parking to,
No,
And that was a big
Not that-
part of
Right.
the previous project was, putting parking in and making sure that the grades were correct to provide that ADA accessibility.
And one of the things that I wrote down that greatly influences the price are the things on the outside of the field. What I call the amenities,
Yeah.
and the details of that, like when you move the bleachers, where do they go? It's easy to say they're gone, but are they upside down over in the parking lot, or are they up?
I think-
The foundation underneath, and ADA is a big part of that. Where you put the bleachers, now you have to provide ADA access to them, and all of those things are where the devil's in the details.
Last year's project was gonna be, right up by the booster shack, where they tend to park, was gonna become a parking lot for the buses and the handicap parking. Because then they'd have access right to the ramp on the booster shack to get up into the bleachers. And that was part of last year's project that went to, right? Right.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that we talked about was, what's the best way? We got a lot of material, topsoil to leave, and then we got material to come in. Access road, how do we do that? We don't want to, we thought about the fact that, okay, we've got to provide access. Could that be converted into something when we're done? Trying to be efficient with it, but
yeah.
I can't say it's all designed and figured out.
No.
We didn't have the survey that we need to do all that, but it is an important component.
Yeah, we'll have to coordinate like a lay down area for staging and equipment and park, like that's all part of the deal.
That could work out though, if you
Um,
think about it coming off of county, right into that back field, right
County
to the
Street.
track.
Yep, so County Street
Access to both sides.
is basically the street that runs along here, and there's a gate here. And then there's a access through this area here, the parking lot off of Park Street. So that comes here, and then there's an access point here that was improved upon this year as well. The street has been cut down. That kind of thing.
Right, and two more really quick ones, and they're not necessarily for you guys, so sorry, I'll give you a break. Has the subcommittee looked at partnering opportunities? And the reason I ask is, like at Arlington, they have the gym is like sponsored by Mac Molding. Have we reached out to any partners for funding relief?
No, that was your job.
Oh,
That's why we invited you.
yeah. Remember, I'm on week 11.
No, but that's what we were told about you, so.
I think the question came up, Holly, it's like, cart horse, like, do we have a project, do we have something to name it after, or, do we need board approval to get that? Like, I think if the board says, hey, go find a sponsor, then we could. If we have a project that says, hey, let's go do this, maybe we could.
And some of the things I was thinking about, and I know we've talked about it in previous, committees, meetings, is, exactly as Chad is saying, okay, the field, the lights and the track, but there's so much more to the project, right? Like the infrastructure, the walkways, the fencing, the scoreboard, that's stuff that I think like the committee could then, start soliciting and finding like, oh, we want to put a new scoreboard, but we're not going to do that through, the lease. But hey, can we fundraise, or can we find a donor for that? We want trees, like at different spots. We want, a walkway and a new parking lot and stuff like that. So that's stuff that I think is the extra, the amenities that are going to make the project happen. But I don't know that exactly as Chad is saying, that it makes much sense right now to start getting that those ducks in a row. Just because I don't think we're gonna be fundraising for the field or the track or the lights. Like, I mean, I think that's like, it's just too big an ask, but all all those extras that I think will really make the project happen. That's where the committee is looking to go.
Yeah, I want to say we were like with Chad, we weren't also sure what we were allowed to fundraise for. Like how much community input are we allowed to have? Because you would probably want to put a sign or something like that saying this is sponsored by. So as a committee, we weren't sure where we were in order to be allowed to do that. Because it's a school, are we allowed to do that? Are we not allowed to do that? So that was something that we took out of the equation for the time being, because that was something we had to go to our lawyers and find out about. So we were trying to just do the overall project in general.
I have booster questions, but I'll wait for another time. Is it possible when you put the bid together to, do the whole project? Like I call it cafeteria construction, like so we can pick and choose what we want to do.
Yeah.
So
So
do,
part,
like this is the whole,
there's a line item.
yeah,
So
okay.
there's a total project cost.
And then you have deductibles.
No, it's in reverse. So we have line items of all the different line items of the scope of the project.
Okay.
Certain line items are broken down, I think, a little bit too much, like, it tells you how much the logo costs. It's got, and then there's, like track surfacing, site work, all that stuff. And bonds are always an adder in case you need them, but that's, percent. So it's all broken down. And then there's a total at the bottom. You can see which portion of the project, what each portion of the project costs. And then there's a scope description under each line item. So for example, under track, line item, type of track surface, probably like a cubic yard cost to line up with whatever the co-op is, and then a summary of what it is.
Okay.
But it can have add or deduct alternates depending on maybe for amenities. The scoreboard is an excellent example. It's done all the time where you get donors or sponsors or somebody that wants to
I'm just gonna say.
advertise on that scoreboard and, to pay for the scoreboard.
I have a question. In the project with the existing track areas like the high jump, the pole vault, they would all be part of the main project and included?
The way I looked at those was we were gonna blow those up. Okay, on the inside. We're gonna still put them back. But the oval, we were gonna keep the blacktop, but I just felt these runways with the grass all around them and all of that.
That's great. It sounds like you'd have to
Make sure everything matches. I was gonna give you all the video. That's the way I laid it out.
And I think the location, like in our design phase, like back, I'm good. The last time, like I think the location of where those had changed as well. I mean, it wasn't you. I think it was Amanda who was like, chiming in saying, hey, we want this pit next to this, and so there, but it had gone through. So I know that was talked about, like, hey, where should the lane, the jump?
We could spend more money trying to work around where they are.
That long jump pit is really short. It's
Right.
about
But you have the room to do it right there. We felt.
Nice to have a long,
Yeah.
some long, some are
It's-
120, 130 feet. That's pretty short.
No, if we move it,
Yeah.
We're not adding scope to charge more money. If we didn't do that, it would look like hell after it was done.
we have to attach the turf. So I could spend more in putting curb around those existing than to take them out and do it right and build it into the
Project.
project.
Anybody else from the committee with, we're gonna talk time frame here? Sure, do you guys have, thought process as far as timing goes?
I'm gonna give you my spiel, and then you can tell me where I'm wrong, but so depending on the design.
We should have rehearsed before.
Right, I know. Well, you give it, but working backwards, right, you want it done by the fall of next year. Is that accurate?
Be fantastic.
So if not, then you run into you want to not do it during the spring or during the fall. You only have one facility, so you want to do it within the 3 or 4 month period within the summertime.
And I think we had we had put in our mind, like back in the day, that if we could get things going late spring, like May, and forego some home track meets or whatever for like, you know, that was why we had thrown the vote out in November and start like kind of rolling.
So that works, and then you're done by middle of August or September 1st, and then you're good to go. So it's about a 4-month construction timeframe. But to get to that starting point, there's 3 or 4 or 5 months before that where you need to do design, you need to do permitting, submittals, back and forth, maybe go to maybe 2 or 3 different P&Z hearings or whatever. So you're talking, when you start working backwards, we're kind of not that far away of when you want to say, okay, hey, I want to do this. So you kind of, it's a mid-October, in about 30 days, you kind of have to make a decision saying, hey, do we want to start designing and permitting this? If you don't, then to get that field ready by September 1st is going to be very, very challenging. So, and every month you wait just kind of increases it by month. So if you come back and say, hey, you know what, we talked or whatever, and it's March, I want to do this, you're talking spring of 24.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So you have, you got about a month to kind of say, hey, I want to start permitting and designing this if you want it by next year.
We control once we put a shovel in the ground. We don't control the regulatory approval process.
Yeah.
We can bring a sense of urgency. We can give them every piece of information that they need.
Yeah.
But
And you
we
can't
do not
control
control their approval timeline or process. So you can't give enough credit to how long that can take. The other thing we don't control is your decision-making.
Right.
You never give yourself enough credit to figure out the scope and the details of that, and some parts of that, we can't go for permitting until we're all on the same page. And a lot of people get on the same page.
And construction timetable, about 4 months for this type of project?
Yeah, yes.
A question for maybe Renee and Tony. The Band-Aid that we did to Spinelli last year cost, I forgot the number, and will that last another year? Or are we gonna have to do it again?
You're gonna have to do more. in the
More,
spring.
said we spent how much on it?
It was close to 100.
Right,
60?
Yeah.
60, but then we had some added
You got
costs.
some other stuff.
so we spent $100,000 on a Band-Aid,
Under 100, but yeah,
on
close
a
enough.
Band-Aid that isn't gonna hold another year.
And we had a pretty dry fall.
Is if you work it and aerate it and fertilize it and
Right.
maintain
Yeah.
it and you have to do continual.
No, I just wanted to clarify for the group and to those people watching that
And we
it,
had,
it wasn't a fix.
and we so far have had a pretty dry fall.
And
This
now
was a
we're
whole
doing it
different
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be interesting to see how that field holds up if we play our game tomorrow.
I would advise not to.
It's my senior night though.
Can I ask this question? How long is the lease? We've talked about a lease. How long is that lease?
It's up to 8 years. So you can go anywhere, a minimum a year, if you wanted to, but up to 8 years.
So when you lease it, it costs more each year, right?
Well, there is interest involved.
Mhm.
So the actual cost of the project costs more than what the lump sum cost would be.
And so what is the lump sum?
We don't know. We don't know the answer to that.
But we worked with some ballpark figures.
Yeah, back in February, it was about $2.5 million. But the defined scope of work we've talked about here, the amenities are what drives, what's going on outside that track. I didn't have new fence. I didn't have a lot of amenities that I know you want. I didn't have a new scoreboard. I didn't have a place for the bleachers to go. So those are the things I didn't have, all these additional parking and those things that'll drive what is that cost. And also that was back in February.
Right, so with a lease, you multiply this 5 or 6, maybe even 7 times. And each year, you have to pay more in terms of your lease.
So you have to factor in the interest into the total cost. And that's broken down into either monthly, quarterly, or annual payments. Just like with a mortgage, if you, the longer, if you pay every year, you pay a little bit more interest. But you do have an interest, older interest carry on each year. So, I mean, ultimately, you're right, you're paying more money for the project than you would if you just gave us 2.5.
And possibly up to about $10,000. Am I correct?
I don't know.
Well, I'm just saying possibly. But so
$10,000 more than the whole project. I mean, $10,000 a year.
if we started off with 2.5, at the end of 8 years, it would probably cost $10,000 more.
Yeah, it's probably gonna be a little more than that.
Yeah.
Anybody else on the committee or? No, I'm not on the
Yeah, no,
committee, so
yeah.
go ahead.
Like, I'm just saying, if anybody else on the committee has a question or a comment, all right, just.
Yeah,
Question,
I'm
John?
kind of confused because at our last meeting at the library, we're talking about 1.9 million. And now we're talking about, Tony mentioned the parking lot. I don't know why we're doing the parking lot up there.
No, I said that's what we did. That's what we had in the last
The
one.
last one, okay.
I didn't say we were doing it now.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Because if we're gonna supposedly sticking to just the field, yeah, you can move the bleachers out. It shouldn't be a big deal anyway, but the lighting, I'm concerned. Now, you're talking about 15 to 20 feet down for these poles or something?
Foundation, we would need to do our geotechnical investigation that
Okay.
deep. The foundation itself would probably go in 15 feet deep.
Okay.
It depends on the soil conditions.
Just a rough idea what that would cost. I don't know how many posts you're talking about putting in.
It's about a foot, so 4 poles.
Okay.
Depending on the soil conditions, there's multiple foundations you can do. You need a minimum of 8-foot depth for a spread footing, or you can do a real core foundation that has to go down probably 12 to 15 feet depending.
Okay.
But a turnkey lighting proposal for today is in the $400,000 to $500,000 range.
And so if you took the lighting out, you'd be back near your $2 million number.
Well, yeah, I mean, the concern is eventually, I mean, we had in here, I've got the figures from before, we had 384,000. Actually, the storage building came in at 325, then it come up to 384, then it went back to 354. So I'm concerned, it's a lot of money for a storage building. And
Well, we're not doing it.
I understand that, but I know how this works. I've been on these boards for 30 years. And trust me, I know what happens a year or two down the road. We're gonna add this, we're gonna add that. And I can tell you with this inflation and the recession and stuff, it don't look good. I mean, for people in this town. So, but anyway, that's all I have for now.
Okay.
I'd like to add, originally when I talked to Jim, we were talking about a number, I think it was 2.1 or something like that. We were talking about a 500 candle lighting system, if you remember. Remember we talked about that?
50-foot candles.
500 to 300
Alright,
candle lights.
So 50 to 30, so 50 was, and then I talked to Ashley and she had already done some research on it. Now Ashley was the previous AD. And she said, we didn't really need the 50, we just needed the 30. There was about a $200,000 difference in those lighting systems. So it's up to us to decide where you want to go with that lighting system.
Put candles at the working surface.
Yeah, it's 1 meter above grade.
Okay.
So the average foot candle is like 30 for a minimum, 50 with LEDs for a maximum. The light, the stuff the lighting's made out of, the copper, galvanized steel, the drivers.
But that's all okay for
So-
small ball play as well.
So yeah,
30's, yeah,
Fine,
30,
right?
30,
Making a good point.
yeah, it's 30 for small ball. I don't know, yeah, you should be selling lights, but for small ball, it's fine. Especially with LED lights, because the uniformity is so tight, it's a lot better than like an old, it's equivalent to an older 50-foot candle system, which was like college level.
When you guys talk,
You know,
it's Charlie Brown, just.
Oh, it's a better quality light.
I gotta deal with it every day.
so the question is, you don't need 50, you can get.
I just want to make sure that lacrosse is able to play on that field
100%,
too.
no question. We
Yeah.
wouldn't be providing a lighting system for soft sports.
We have one now.
That's right. Well, what you have now, again, is you probably have 6-foot candles.
The ones that are working. Well, I mean, currently we have, I think, 6 poles and I mean, those were put in the 80s, I
Yeah.
believe. And I'm assuming the LEDs would be more energy efficient.
Oh, yeah, so you have 1,000 watt low highlight fixtures, you have 6 poles, you go down to 4, you have 6 fixtures per pole and lights the whole darn field up. And the lighting's so direct that you actually have to put in fixtures halfway up the pole shooting up, because the ball will go over, will actually go over the lights or something like that.
Andrew, just to like clarify, and just for like our benefit, and I know you guys gotta work on a proposal, like, I mean, you're like, but what we're looking for as far as the committee goes is not an extension of the track, not like, you know, parking and Fran's building that he brought up was last year. It's really just a lighting system that's gonna work for small ball as well as, be energy efficient. A track that's gonna be resurfaced and like, ready to like, with the jumping and all the other interior stuff. And a turf that is going to be filled into the existing area. Those are the 3 things that we're looking at. To me, all the other stuff is stuff that we'll deal with after the fact. It's not.
I understand, but all cards on the table, you're still at or above that $2.5 million. Right. So just, we don't.
Just the site work alone is.
Well, just the recent, it costed, there's stuff going on that we don't have control over. Shipping a field up here costs $50,000 more than it did a year. Just honest. So, but I don't want us to walk out of here and you get a number from us and go, what the heck are you guys talking about? But just with those 3 items, you're still plus 2.5.
Yep.
Can I ask that? Is there going to be a price increase? I think we were discussing that. So if we don't act now, what's the likelihood of it being even more expensive next year? We've got around some numbers, 10%.
If I had a crystal ball, I wouldn't be at this meeting. But I will say that for over the last 2 years, I would say an average of 15% a year. Is that accurate?
Which this industry was extremely stable for a long time. It's only been in the last few years. This young man over here, though, mentioned something that we all have to be concerned with, and it's recession. So
You don't know. I would say the last 2 years at an average of 15% a year.
Yeah.
So that's 30% over a 2-year period.
And that's industry-wide, that's not,
yeah, and before that, it was 1 or 2%.
Right. It's just it's shipping, it's copper, it's pipe, it's, these guys.
Petroleum-based products, it's everything.
So I think and I appreciate you guys coming, making the drive. And I think what we want to do as a committee, and like, I'll ask if anybody has any, further questions, but we want to be able to present like kind of our findings and our recommendation, to the board going forward. I don't know that we can make a recommendation or whatever until we kind of, see the numbers.
That's 100% fair. When do you need it by? And is it a?
Yes.
So just as a rule of thumb, the longer we have, the more finite the number can be. So if you need it tomorrow, or need it in an hour, it's gonna be $8 million. You don't know, but seriously, like when we work backwards when you need stuff, so when would you need it by?
Well, we would like to, I would like to be able to go to, when is the next MAU board meeting?
19th.
The 19th. So I would like to be able, of October. I'd like to be able to go with like figures there. As a committee, I can email and we can talk via there. I can give like that. We don't have to meet again as a
We
committee.
can call it preliminary.
Right.
I already put some things together. I just have to
We gotta go.
factor it up. The scope that you've asked for is similar to what I did put together. We need to get our heads together, but I can get you something preliminary. But for the next step, that's where that survey, if there's already been some of those things that have been done, because to design that project, there probably is current survey somewhere. But if not,
Who has it? Do you have that info? Like,
We didn't do a survey.
We did.
MSK.
some of the plans,
and if not, I already had kind of factored that in, but that's something I'll need to really do. And I'll have to call it preliminary, because without the geotechnical investigation, I'm making my educated guess as to what we'll have to do to comply with stormwater regulations. We'll look at soil classifications for this area and all of that to try to come up with the best educated guess. And we've done a lot of work around here and gone through the permitting process before.
And Renee, can you speak on like the budget side of things? Because I know that's in process right now. Like what is the time frame as far as like, you know, what would you need like as far as knowing whether or not this, because it would be in like this next year's budget, you know, if that.
There's two questions there. One, when does the budget get approved? And the second, okay,
We have to have it set by
by
mid-January.
statute, mid-January, voted on
We
in March.
must vote.
in March. And then when are the funds able to be dispersed?
We would be voting on a July 1.
So July 1, they come back
2020.
and go, okay. And then is there any type of allocation that can be done before that, like for Jim, you throw the number out for design permitting and all that stuff, because if we have to wait till July 1 to be able to start doing the permitting, this is not a 23 project, it's a 24 project, and the price isn't 2.5, it's 3.2.
Well, Holly keeps promising that she's gonna save us tons of money and energy costs, so that'll free up money for us to do some engineering.
Well,
So, but
it's a real, my energy. No, that's great. It's a real question because if we can do that in if you can go through the budget process and in tandem, we can be doing everything else, that design doesn't go away. You have that. You're gonna eventually do the field, my guess, at some point you have that. Let's do it in tandem so that maybe you can do it in next year. So that's a real thing. Numbers on that,
Well,
75 cents, dollars.
you're probably looking at $40,000 to $50,000 to do survey, geotech, preliminary design, ready for permitting.
Yeah, and you won't know what the permitting costs are until you know how much the project costs. And it's kind of like saying, hey, we want a car, but until they get the information they need, you don't know whether it's a Chevette or a Mustang, you know, like, so they need to be released to do all their back work to let us know, to inform the design.
And the only way that money would be like a sunk money where you just burn and throw in the trash is if you never did the project. So if you never do the project, it's a bad move. So the decision tree goes to bad, but if you eventually do the project, it's not bad. You'll have all that there.
wouldn't there be some, I mean, this is your Renee question, but wouldn't there be savings on maintenance as well that you'd have to figure in there and?
Yeah, but well, I'm not speaking.
Well, I know that you just said it's
It's not now. No, it's.
Yeah, but I mean, it would be made.
It would be, we'd have instant savings
Instant savings.
on paint, manpower.
Manpower.
Gas.
So that-
I mean, that's,
That would, we have to have another number that would have, and the lack of putting another $100,000 into a field for a Band-Aid.
Question, if, I know like there's money, like, because that money wouldn't be available till July 1, maybe one of the 6 people watching on Facebook or someone hears about this, hey, this is a project that they need money up front. If someone were to say, hey, I want to donate money, they could specifically say this is for the first year, that 50,000 for the engineering. Like someone could give that money for the first year. They don't have to wait for the budget to be approved if someone wanted to give money for the design.
Well, if you know, let me know, I'll call.
Donate.
Yeah, so, and to your point, regardless of if we go natural or solid or artificial, it doesn't really matter what path we go down, that baseline information will need anyway.
You'll always need it.
If we sign a contract in December, whether it's for a lease or just half the money up front or whatever, and not wait for the budgetary thing, we could probably save a lot more money, both for the increase for a year waiting and the fact that we could lock in a price.
So everything you're saying is, I would, yes, yeah, all yeses. I don't, so yes, for everything. I don't know if you can sign a contract before the money is actually voted on. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, the money could be voted on in, at the meeting.
In November.
in November or in December, whatever, but it could be, and
Are you talking about money from this year's budget, Jackie, or money
Correct.
from, so using money that
From this
maybe, that could be allocated
Leftover or
from,
something like that.
like, that could be allocated from this year's budget?
Yeah,
So-
that's a good point.
but if we set it, and your numbers are correct by December, and the December meeting, I don't know what the date of the December meeting is, or the November meeting, I don't have them, I know next week we have another meeting. So, but before we even do that, I really like the specs on
Yeah.
the materials that are used personally. And I'd like to fly those by a couple of people over at Bennington College and ask their advice. There's a couple of people I also know up at the state, and I like to fly those materials by them too, because the two concerns, as we stated before, were the money on the vote, and the other concern was the PFOA and other contaminants. So before we take a vote, I'd like that out and somebody to say to me and the public, these are okay.
Yeah, so I think cut sheets in general, we can provide some things, the PFAS documentation I give out once a week. So, yeah, I mean, we have all that, but we're happy to provide that, absolutely.
Yeah, and if you need a contact at the college, I still work there part-time. And I just spent 13 years there, so Judith Inc. and the microplastics at Kappa would be a great resource.
We'd be happy, but
So does it make sense to the committee, and again, I'm just want to be aware of time, we're about an hour and a half in right now, to possibly just like take a step back, maybe give Andrew and Jim a little more time to put some, real numbers together. And maybe we have another meeting once those, numbers are set, by the end of October, early November as a committee. And then we can look at them, make a recommendation, and then maybe at the November, MAU board meeting. Also, we can share them with all the members of the board. I've done that, before, giving you guys like all the data and the information just so that you can sift through it and look at it ahead of time. And then we'll kind of meet as a committee, make a recommendation, and then I can go to, maybe that November board meeting, and, kind of speak on behalf of the committee. Does that, kind of slow it down a little bit and kind of give you guys maybe a little more?
Let me make one point. My numbers aren't gonna change much unless you get me more information.
Okay.
Or allow me to go forward. I can give you the same number next week that I'll give you in November, unless I have geotech and survey and more detailed information. What I haven't done is update from February here. In case that influences your decision, I'm just trying to be honest. I'd love more time, but does it?
If we did this in November,
And it went through, and we said, okay, we're gonna do it. Are we still looking at May?
I would say barely, yes. Don't you think? I mean, it's all about permitting at that point.
if we get 60 days of permitting, 90 days of permitting, yeah, that's fine. I think that's. If everything hit on schedule, I think we'd be comfortable starting the meeting.
I want to remind just the world is understaffed and the permitting office of the state is understaffed. The geotechnical guys are 6 months behind, so they're not like people you can call tomorrow and have them come with the drone ring to do geotechnical force. And we don't have any control over that.
So I would think that it would be important to continue to present at our next board meeting.
Okay.
Well, I just spoke to, this is Chayla, I'm finally in a place where I can speak. Hi, I just spoke to Leon earlier today, and he says he's canceling the October 19th meeting because of the annual meeting upstate. So it doesn't sound like there's going to be a board meeting next week, but I do think maybe it would be beneficial, instead of canceling it altogether in October, maybe speaking to Leon and finding a new date rather than canceling it all together, because then that would give us a little bit more time. Maybe it's the week after, and that'll give us more time to get like some more numbers. And then we can potentially not be cutting it so close to the third week in November rather than maybe doing it the last week in October. Just a thought.
I agree. Didn't know about the meeting being changed.
Thank you, Jill. As far as the surveys, like you, Renee, you're pretty confident that nothing has been done. Like, I just don't know what the previous work by the engineering, what MSK, like, I don't know what they did. Like,
I can tell you that nothing went through, like, if they did it, I had no knowledge of them doing it. So I'm not saying they couldn't have done it, but I would think that I would know that they were there doing it.
But those plans that we've already paid for, we paid for those are ours.
Yeah, there
So
should,
we could share them with,
there
Right.
should, from, based on my previous information on the project, actually, you should have something for what the cost, the contract value, you should have, there should be some stuff there that would help us further refine the things going forward.
so I guess we would share it with them, right?
I just don't know who I mean, I know I have like
I know.
emails that they've
I
sent
have
me,
them.
but I just don't know who the keeper of, like, was it central office that kind of kept all the, like,
We would rather, you would have to engage because you're the owner of the materials.
Yeah.
Um,
It looks like they did some baseline, but nothing to inform them of what they need to know right now.
Okay.
Mike?
Yes.
But, can you explain about the track? Now, you're not gonna dig the whole track up, you're just gonna fix the little dips but are you gonna add another lane? I mean,
That wasn't my thought. My thought was, after looking at it, the top cushioned surface has to come off. That's
all around the track.
all of it.
Okay, that's what I wanted to get.
And then,
Okay.
but underneath that is a pavement, is a blacktop pavement, like the road pavement.
Okay.
The planarity that with a few exceptions didn't look, usually you can tell. And it seemed to me like it'd be worth taking that off, fixing those areas and putting a new surface back.
Okay, all right,
Without digging everything up and starting all over.
okay.
And friends, I apologize, I have 2 kids at home that are,
yeah, we're gonna
running
be.
from that time that.
Does anybody else have?
But
Yeah.
please reach out, I'm a wealth of useless knowledge, and I'm happy to be helpful in any way.
Does anybody else have any further questions? I'll take I mean, from what Jim just in responding to you, like, I mean, the time is not, like, you're not gonna need any more time unless we can give you like more information, and I don't know that we have that.
Right, if I get drawings, then I can refine things.
Yeah,
If I don't, then I'm just going to update.
Yeah.
Put it that.
and I can share previous, drawings and designs, and I can touch base with Renee.
Everything I've been doing so far has been from a site visit and Google satellite, which is,
Yeah.
pretty good square footage to drive the price.
Yeah.
The more square footage,
Correct,
the higher the price is,
so.
Yeah, I have
I mean, I
copies.
have. I have.
Like,
I don't think so,
No, I know you would have mine get left. You're gonna leave at the office or.
I did.
Up the sample.
It was Paul.
Oh, not mine, somebody's getting it.
Okay.
That's pretty easy.
All right, I guess free storage for Renee.
They may have one.
All right, this one, too hard, and it pops.
Okay.
So I think as a committee, and, I don't think we need a motion because we don't have anything to, agree to. We'd like, I think, as the chair of the committee, I'd love you guys to work up, some numbers. Renee, can I task you with sharing what designs like we had, or is that?
I have the reports, yeah, that's what I have.
So the reports from the original,
MSK.
the engineer who took, so like, we'll share those, with you. Yeah, and just see, again, we're just looking at, as we said, the three, main, so there's a lot more in those reports and in details that we're kind of looking to move aside from. And then I guess, if you guys could just, give us the timeline. I know you've talked about it a little bit, but saying, for our budgets, everything's got to be kind of generated by January, but really probably before January.
I already met with Tim
I
yesterday.
know.
So we're underway.
So, I know it's coming, and I know for you guys that timing is
There is a
coming.
little flexibility, so I mean, July 1, you spend money, we've done projects where we're starting in June, floating them on, but, we know it's not going
And
anywhere.
I also, appreciated and I'm interested in what Jackie was saying about, possibly looking at, finding some money that may be left over from this year's budget to be able to say, hey, let's allocate some of this that, hey, is extra, and we can kind of bring down the price or something.
Depending on the size of that upfront contribution, we could order the long lead time items that usually have an increase in the next calendar year, so it would save a tremendous amount of money.
So if that makes sense, we'll just hold off, and then I'll email everybody on the committee, whether or not we'll meet, again, in person, or whether it's just kind of being shared email.
What should be their contact email?
Do you want it to be me, or do you
It
want?
should be, don't you think it should be her?
Well, as the chair of
He's
the
on the
committee,
So,
yeah, so
yeah.
I think it should be you.
Yeah.
and then you can-
We're gonna
Yeah.
give you our cards,
Perfect.
you email us,
Will do.
and then we'll have one point of contact with us three on it.
Got it. Perfect. And then I'll share I'll be in touch with you guys anyways. Awesome. All right, thanks you guys so much.
Cat TV is celebrating 30 years of community media. Help support Cat TV's next 30 years by becoming a member today. Your membership will help us continue covering meaningful, local content. Thank you for supporting your local community media station.